Just really quickly, we'll take a look at the agenda. So in just a moment, we will introduce the panelists, and then we're going to have an overview of family engagement. After that, we will talk a little bit about a model for support for families during this distance learning period, and go dive a little deeper into the model with and talk about strengthening relationships and connecting communities and focusing on learning and building their capacity. And we'll wrap up with a discussion about how families can use PBS LearningMedia to support at-home learning. And at the end, we'll have some Q&A. So jumping right into the panelists, we have Deidre, or Dee Liggins, who is the coordinator of the school age program at the Urban League of Greater Oklahoma City. And she is also our PBS Early Learning Champion for 2019. Dee, would you like to say a few words?
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome.
And we also have Brian Jared Morgan, who is an 8th grade teacher at Clyde Boyd Middle School in Sand Spring Public Schools. Jared is the 2017 Top 50 Digital Innovator and the 2018 PBS Digital Innovator All-Star. Jared?
Hey, everybody. I'm excited to focus on family engagement here in this as we move into the second week of virtual learning.
And next we have Sonia Johnson, who is the Executive Director of Family and Community Engagement, and also the 21st Century Community Learning Centers with the Oklahoma State Department of Education.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
And I am Curtis Calvin, Vice President of Education and Outreach with the Oklahoma Educational Television Authority. And I'm just going to dive right into talking a little bit about family engagement. So as educators, we know the value of parental involvement in a student's educational experience. However, what we have learned over time is that there may be several barriers to a parent being involved with their child's education. They may not have the time, knowledge, or confidence among many reasons. Therefore, the concept of family engagement goes beyond what we once knew in order to meet the needs of students today. Family dynamics in today's world can vary greatly from house to house. So the student's parent may not be their actual caregiver. That person could be a grandparent, aunt or uncle, a cousin, friend of the family, or even a neighbor. People in modern communities today work together to create support networks for children. Family engagement, then, is the creation and maintenance of an equitable, relationship-based partnership with the student's care network in support of their successful educational experience. While the teacher or other school personnel may be the initiator of the relationship, the partnership capitalizes on the strengths of each party, where everyone is working and growing together within their capacity for the sake of the student. This webinar today is designed to provide you with some insight and strategies that you can incorporate into your instructional planning during this time of distance learning. I invite Sonia Johnson to share with you a basic framework for engaging with families before we hear from our presenters.
Thanks so much, Curtis. I appreciate it today. Welcome, everybody. And thank you again for taking the time. We know what a busy time this has been for all of our educators across the state. We know the hard work that's going into launching all of this distance learning in your communities and the partnerships you've been developing to be ready for your families in this situation. So what we want to share today is a framework, an outline of some things we've been working on through the State Department of Ed in looking at how we begin to guide positive and relation-based family engagement. So what I want to start with today is just a quick metaphor for you to think a little bit about family engagement. And as you think about it, what we like to talk about is that there's this idea that everybody that must come together to help in a NASA space launch. So if we think about NASA trying to launch a rocket, we think about it involves so many experts, and all of those experts, it depends on them to collaborate, to be able to work together. They have to plan together for their launch. They have to set goals, really think about a clear and consistent communication plan to get that rocket launched. It takes time. They have to plan early and know what their goals are. They have to have mutual goals. They have to know what their end goal looks like. And so when we think about all the scientists and the astronauts and the mathematicians, the physicists, everybody working together to get that rocket launched, what I want you to think about for just a moment is if we think about a child's learning and we think about that child's learning is the same as this rocket, and that our engagement really does support the launch of that child's learning. It takes frequent coordinated communication among this support team for that student. Everyone involved, educators, parents, school officials, students in the community, everybody has a role to play in launching this learning. Everybody, comes from, all of our families are from very diverse, backgrounds, as Curtis mentioned to us. They come with different strengths and challenges from different cultures and histories, maybe speak different languages and have different abilities. But what we know about family engagement is that it has benefits for all of us. All of our students deserve this support that this group can come together and provide. And all of our students deserve this opportunity to succeed. But what we also see is that there's many benefits beyond that student to our teachers. If we work together to launch that learning, we see that with more and deeper family engagement, that our teachers have a stronger job satisfaction, increased confidence in working with our families, and really a better understanding of where our families are right now and the supports that they need. We also know, as we think about family engagement for our students, that with a deeper family engagement plan in place, that we see our students have better test scores, better attendance in our schools, better attitudes towards learning. And then for our families, we see that they are, and the research tells us all of this, they feel more supported, they have increased confidence in their child's education, and they have better conversations with their own students, about school and education. So it's not just our teachers, it's also our policies and our practices. And that's really why the State Department is here today to help embark on this plan to support you in this work. So as educators, we've identified 4 key guiding principles for you to be thinking about as you're working on your distance learning plans. And Shantae is going to take us out of our screen and she's going to take us over to the State Department of Education website, where I'm going to just provide you a brief overview of each of these 4 areas. And then our goal today in inviting you here is for you to hear from your peers, from Dee and Jared, about how the OETA partnership can really help you meet each of these areas and what they're seeing in their work by using the OETA resources with families. So the first area that we talk about in these principles is around strengthening relationships. This is really this opportunity to establish more personalized two-way communication between schools and families. It allows the opportunity for us to build trust and provide families with really an authentic sense of engagement. So as we're thinking about this, Dee is going to talk to you a little bit about some real concrete ideas on how we strengthen those relationships. But we really want to focus on how are you listening to your families right now. We're pushing a lot of information out to everybody, but have we had the opportunity yet at this time to listen to what would be most helpful for our families? The second area is around building capacity, and Jared's going to talk a little bit more with you about that, about how the OETA partnership has really helped him in building that confidence in learning with the families, how he uses the tools to show families what the students are learning and the relevance there. Then we talk about focusing on learning, and that's really making sure that our learning is meaningful and relevant to those families. And Jared, again, is going to show you some great ideas about how he links that for those families and make sure that they're understanding the purpose behind learning, the why of what they're doing. And then the fourth area is around connecting communities. And that really is, Dee's going to jump back in there and share a little bit about the connecting communities. We know that it's not only about connecting our families to community resources, but it's also about connecting families family to family so that they have the opportunity to be able to support one another. So Shantae was going to pull us over to the website. We'll see if she's able to do that. If not, I can jump us in there and be able to do that, Shantae, for us, if that would be helpful. And we'll just show you real quickly. These are all located on our State Department of Education website.
Absolutely. I'm going to stop sharing, Sonia, and go ahead and let you share to be able to pull that up on your screen.
Great. All right. I'm moving into share for you there. Shantae, can you just confirm that everyone can see the website for me? And when you're on the website, the first thing that you're going to do is visit, there is a box in midway down that says Distance Learning Resources. On the Distance Learning Resources page, then what you can do is scroll down about halfway. I'm going to scroll slow so that I don't make anybody seasick with the scrolling, and you'll see Essential Resources for Families. So those four areas that Jared and Dee are going to talk about with you, those are located right here in this resource area. And you can see strengthening relationships, building capacity, focus on learning, and connecting communities. So if you'd like to read more about these, there's a page that identifies for you what this means, things to consider, and a tool or a resource to help kind of get you started with the conversation. And we do that for each of the four areas for you just to get you started. So at this time, I'm going to turn this back over to Dee. And so I'll stop sharing, Shantae, and let you go back into the slideshow. And then I'll turn it over to Dee, who can unmute Dee, and you'll be ready to roll. Thank you, everybody. Please let us know if you have.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Dee Liggins, the Oklahoma PBS Learning Champion and the School Aid Program Coordinator for the Urban League of Greater Oklahoma City. I just want to visit with you a few moments about strengthening relationships and connecting communities during this pandemic. I know that our students and our families are trying to adapt to our new temporary normal. Our children are naturally curious and creative, constantly attempting to make sense of the world around them, which makes our jobs as educators easy, yet challenging right now. We're all concerned about our personal health and our emotional state, but we also consider our students, our families, and the community. So we're going to talk a little bit about strengthening the relationships. Schools have always been a key component for families' support network. Families need to know that the teachers are still there for them. The pandemic that we're experiencing offers an opportunity for educators to strengthen relationships with their families that we serve. Relationship begins with communication, and a strong relationship with a little personal touch of the two-way communication, which both the caregivers and teachers share their thoughts and feedback to one another. In my work at the Urban League, my families rely on the relationship that I have built with them and the relationship I have with the schools that I work with. I have served as the bridge between the two because I understand both sides. Caregivers are concerned about their child's development. They ask questions about how their child is progressing, both academically and socially. Because of the established partnership through the consistent two-way communication They trust the information that I provide. And I trust that they will do everything within their power to support their children. Because of the pandemic that we are experiencing, caregivers may not have access to the bridge that we've created for the best interest of their children. They are relying on you more now than ever. We need to check in with the caregivers, talking about how the kids are adjusting and sharing our own experiences during this time to help build a rapport that can serve as a foundation for trust. They need to know that we are in this together. Families need timely information that they can understand. In this time of distance learning, we understand that we are approaching teaching and learning like never before. Educators are entering families' home and impacting how children and the caregivers interact with their children. Even though the ask is indirect, caregivers are the people who are guiding learning experiences because they are there making sure that the child is logged on like they're supposed to and completing the assignments that they've been assigned. When the children need help now, they'll go to their caregiver first. So it's important that teachers equip them with the information they need to be present and feel comfortable for their child. This way, they can learn together and authentically engage, and in some cases, extend the child's learning experience. As the relationship builds, caregivers will begin sharing information, thoughts, and feedback with you with their child's learning experience. And although informal, they will check to see if you're listening. When they see the conversation reflecting to their child's success, the relationship will move to the partnership level where both parties are working in tandem for the sake of their child's education. That is the true goal of strengthening a relationship. We're going to talk a little bit about connecting the communities. In my work, I'm a part of a learning community, gathering and sharing resources to help caregivers provide the supportive experiences that serve as building blocks for the classroom teachers. Caregivers face many challenges with providing their children's needs so they can learn. Most are unaware of the resources that are often found right there at their doorstep. Within a 5-mile radius of the Urban League, there is a library, a zoo, and 3 museums, as well as many available out-of-school learning activities that are offered by community partners, social services, and nonprofit organizations. These are resources that the caregiver can use if they know how to access them. Just as we moved into distance learning, organizations that help with these needs of families are also moving to provide online services such as virtual field trips and many other virtual supportive activities. These organizations have historically worked with schools to provide enrichment experiences. Sharing information about available resources helps to broaden the family's connection to the community around them so that they won't feel so isolated during this time. Also knowing that there is support helps to reduce the barriers that the caregivers are feeling about engaging with their child. They can create, and in conjunction with you, lifelong experiences that will result in successful outcomes. So let us continue to connect with our community and strengthen these relationships. Jared, can you help us out about the many different ways that are available for them?
Sure, thank you so much, Dee. So as I was introduced earlier, my name is Jared Morgan, and I teach 8th grade science and French in Sand Springs. And I've been nominated in the past as the PBS Digital Innovator and All-Star for the state of Oklahoma. So thank you guys for joining me today as we move into, as teachers in this work, how we can build capacity and focus on learning as we engage with our families. So while we're certainly living in some difficult times right now, it's kind of neat how distance learning provides the opportunity for educators to help increase the family's ability and confidence to support their students' learning. I really love the guiding principles offered by the State Department of Education. And honestly, during those 2 weeks, when school was canceled, I really spent a lot of time prepping curriculum for distance learning and not really taking a lot of time to think about the family engagement piece of the new way we would be doing school. But now that we're about a week into distance learning in Oklahoma, I think it's really important to bring this idea of engaging with families back to the forefront of our minds, especially considering that families will be the main contact our students have during this time, as Dee mentioned. So let's take a look at how you can work with families to build their capacity, their ability, and their confidence to support their students' learning. First of all, let's remember that we're not just recreating a typical school day for our students at home. Instead, we need to be looking for ways to foster meaningful learning experiences between the parent and the child. The cool thing is that these opportunities can more easily fit in with the student's family life, interests, and identities given our current circumstances. That can sometimes be difficult, including every single student's interest and their identities in the classroom setting. But in this time, when you provide activities to parents and to the students, you can add choice into those activities so that students and parents can choose learning activities that are best geared towards their student interest and their identities. I'll give you just one example that I'm using in my classroom this week. This week we're learning about Newton's laws, and I shared with them 3 different articles that they could use to look at how Newton's laws interact in the real world. So I gave students an article about sports, about dancing, and about space flight, so they could choose, based on their interests, how they most wanted to go about their learning. So now, as you're providing opportunities for choice, you also want to help teach families how they can be a confident partner in their child's education. How can this play out? Well, just like we model different activities with our students in the classroom, we can model to parents how to incorporate strategies that are going to help their students learn. Those strategies might include showing and telling parents how they can describe their thinking or think out loud during an activity. It's also important to share thoughtful question ideas that parents can ask their students during the learning activity you're providing them. A good idea might be to even include a for the parent section on your assignments and use this section to explain the why behind the activity or strategies used. You can explain the expectations to the parents. You can provide extension ideas, which I'm going to be going into more with some OETA tools soon. And you can encourage that communication between the parent and the child by providing discussion questions like I mentioned earlier. Another thing that you can do during this time is use that extra time to reach out and build stronger two-way communications with families. As a secondary teacher who has about 150 students on my caseload, I rarely have the time to reach out to all the families as much as I would like to. But now, since I'm not in the classroom every day, that time has gotten bigger for me, and that's definitely a new goal of mine. Another thing similar to what Dee had mentioned is to seek student and family feedback on distance learning activities. This is new for all of us, and honestly, families want you to listen to how they're doing. So a simple phone call asking, or an email asking, how's the learning going at home and what ways can we help out, is a really great place to start. All in all, our hope and goal should be this capacity building to have greater family engagement that will endure once we return to school as normal. So that was a little bit about building capacity with families. Let's move on to how we can make sure that families and students are focusing on learning at home. You know, as I mentioned earlier, forcing strict school parameters in regards to time, learning activities, and assignment styles might be challenging and frustrating to students and their families right now. Instead, try to, as much as possible, to focus on meaningful learning experiences. And here's what I mean by that. That are happening at the home while people are at their house. And you can turn those everyday activities into learning experiences. For example, cooking, baking, reading, building, yard work, crafts, taking a walk in the neighborhood, watching TV, all of those can be learning experiences. And while these activities are fine on their own, the learning that a student's going to have during that activity is going to significantly increase if the students are engaged in thoughtful conversations with their parents during the activity. So consider adding everyday options for different activities like these to your students as part of the assignments. Also, provide those discussion questions so that parents and students are actively engaging in conversation during these activities. Another example out of my Newton's Laws lessons from this week is I challenged students to look for ways that they saw Newton's laws playing out in their everyday life at home, and then make sure to point out what they noticed to their parents. Finally, a great idea during this time would be to have students set learning goals with you and their family. If you're like me, then having goals and having a schedule and having some sort of structure to your time is even more important now than ever, as our daily routines have been interrupted. So if a child and their family sets learning goals for themselves, then there's going to be a greater likelihood that they focus on learning more and more throughout the day. And then as the teacher, go ahead and check back in periodically on those goals. Okay, so now we've been able to take a look at our those 4 facets of the State Department of Education's Family Engagement Plan for Distance Learning. Let's take a look at what technology tools OETA offers to help us accomplish these goals, both on the air and online. So if you wouldn't mind allowing me to share the screen, there we go. All right, so I'm going to get started by sharing with you a little bit about some of the resources OETA has. Starting online, let's take a look at how PBS LearningMedia, an amazing website which offers a vast array of engaging learning activities and resources, can be used to support families as they engage in the learning process with their child at home. Now, I will say, if you're not familiar with PBS LearningMedia and would like more information on how to sign up and access the content, how to use all the search features, we're not going to go all into that today because that information can be found in a previous webinar. That webinar can be, or the recording, excuse me, of that webinar can be found at oeta.tv under the Learning from Home banner. And there you can find more information about PBS LearningMedia in general, as well as that recording. Okay, but I want to just first let you guys notice that on the OETA PBS LearningMedia homepage, there is some resources for emergency closings. And this is a pretty great place to start as a teacher in order to find resources. They have activities broken down by each grade and content level. And so, for example, pre-K, kindergarten, I'm going to go back up here to grade 8 and take a look at science just because that's what I teach. But this is a great place to start for teachers in finding resources, and it's also a really great place to just a link to share with families, because this is a place where they can find learning activities for all of their students, no matter if they're the student you teach or a younger or older one. I also did want to show everyone on the front page of this emergency closings section of the website. For the younger, for their younger grades, there's a pre-K through K packet and a grades 1 and 2 packet. So printable packets that you can download and share and print off for your families as well. Okay, so now I wanted to show you a pretty cool feature of PBS LearningMedia that if you're familiar with the platform, you may not have realized existed, that I think is a great tool to send some learning activities to students and their families right now, and it's the folder feature. So let's say I am teaching about Newton's laws, like I've been saying this week, and I'm going to do in the search feature Newton's laws of motion. All right, and I'm going to select my grade level, and then I'm going to scroll down here and take a look at some of the resources that are available. So here's a video that I actually shared with my students this week. I'm going to click on it. I'll have an opportunity to take a look about the resource, support materials. These discussion questions I actually shared with my students and their families. But you can go right here and you can favorite that resource. I'll show you one more example. So down here, we have an interactive. This is pretty cool because this gives the students opportunity to read things, watch things, and be able to respond back as well. So I'm gonna favorite that. Once you've favorited quite a few resources that go along with the same teaching objective, then you can go into your profile and click on favorites. Let me try that one more time. There we go, clicking on favorites. And as you click on favorites, you'll see all your favorites listed. You can even type notes, those for the parent notes that I was mentioning. You could type those here even. And then you could go through and select the ones that all go together for the same learning objective. Okay, and then I can press one second. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, I know what it is. I'm logged in with my other account, I bet. But here, let me just show you really quickly what you could do. Sorry about that technical difficulty. So you would press the resources you'd like to share. You'd press add to folder. And then when you go down to folder, you would be able to see all of your different folders. And inside those folders, there would be a link. And you can share that link with your students and their parents. And that'll give them the opportunity to pick and choose what activities they're using in order to increase their students' learning. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing now and send it back over to the slideshow. Okay, and as we're finishing up talking about PBS LearningMedia, let me share with you just a couple quick tips that if you are sharing these resources with parents. So you would want to make sure that parents are, when they're logging in, registering as a teacher. Now, after viewing about 2 or 3 different activities, the website's actually going to prompt them to register for an account. The options are teacher or student, but of course we know that parents are their child's first teacher, and PBS recognizes them as such. So you would be prompting your parents to register as a teacher, and then they would have access to all of these resources. And the cool thing about PBS LearningMedia in that way is that you can curate the resources for the students and share those with the parents, or you could teach the parents how to use PBS LearningMedia to find those extension resources so that after a student finishes learning about Newton's laws, for example, and they have a question about, how does gravity work? I want to know more about that. The parent could go in, do a search on gravity and find resources for them. All right, so those are some of the online resources that are available with OETA. Let's move now to talk about some on-air resources. So OETA has launched some awesome programming throughout the week with their Learning at Home schedules. Just to tell you a little bit more about that, K-5 shows are airing from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Middle school programming is from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. and high school programming is from 2 to 6 p.m. And you can go onto that page I referenced earlier, the oeta.tv, and then click on Learning from Home. And you're going to find the schedule of those shows. And this is really a great resource for most families, as you only need a TV and an antenna in order to access these free OETA shows. Now, watching them is great, but how can we engage with families to create those meaningful learning experiences like I discussed earlier as they watch the OETA programs? Well, first of all, it starts by sharing the fact that OETA is even doing this. If you haven't shared that with your families, please go ahead and do so. Don't assume that everyone knows. But then you can teach your family strategies they can use so they are capitalizing on the learning opportunities that go along with viewing the program. And so there's 2 helpful strategies that PBS has that I'd like to share with you. They're called co-viewing and guided viewing. Let's start with co-viewing first. So co-viewing is geared towards our older audience of students, about 9 and older. And co-viewing works when parents talk to their child after the show. So the parent and the child would watch the show together, and while they're watching, the parent would actively make note of key concepts in the show. After viewing the program, the parent would then lead a discussion with the child about those key concepts. For example, let's say the parent and child watched a NOVA documentary about animal adaptations. After the show, the parent could ask the child to explain what an adaptation is, or they could ask which adaptation they learned about, in their opinion, was most effective and why. Or they could even ask the child what they might want to learn more about the topic, which could start a research project. Now, these types of activities may not be the types of activities that parents would instinctually know to do. That's where that two-way communication comes in, of sharing these viewing strategies with parents. Okay, so now let's take a look at the second strategy, which is guided viewing. Guided viewing is best suited for our younger audience, those students age 8 and younger. Guided viewing is when the parent talks to the child during the show. So here's how it works. First, the parent during the show points out similarities between the character in the show and the child. And this helps to establish a connection between the two, helping the child identify themselves with the character. Second, as the parent notices times when the child begins to have reactions, maybe even emotional reactions along with the character, the parent's going to ask why that character had that type of reaction. You can even then extend this by asking the child if they've ever felt a similar emotion to the one the character is experiencing. Finally, after the show is over, the parent encourages the child to apply what the character learned in the show to their everyday life. This includes noticing times later that day a child could conquer a problem the way the character did in the show, and then referencing that conversation back to the show so that the child knows that, yeah, they solved that problem just like they saw on TV. So let me just say, if you'd like to learn more about these distance learning programs that OETA is providing, either with PBS LearningMedia, or if you'd like to learn more information about these viewing strategies or the programming offered throughout the week, please visit the oeta.tv website and click on the Learning at Home link. Well, thank you guys so much for spending some time with us today, delving into how we can engage with families. I'm going to throw it back over now to the Q&A section.
Great, thank you so much. So Daryl and I are ready to take any questions. We'll be looking in the chat box. You can also raise your hand if you needed to ask a question. I do want to point out that Susan has added in the platform or in that chat the link to the platform. So you can click on that link. I would suggest that you bookmark it and go ahead and create an account to be able to access those free resources that Jared just told us about. Daryl, are you seeing any questions in the chat box?
Not yet. I am looking now and I don't see any questions yet.
So we'll wait a couple of seconds and just see if anybody has any questions. One of the great things about family engagement is that it involves everyone. Everyone in the community has a role to play. And so we just encourage you to think outside of the box. This is a great time, a time of opportunity to really be thinking, how can we work differently? How can we stretch ourselves to really make sure that we're bringing families onto the table as partners as we're going through this difficult time?
And there's a question here, Shantae, but before that question, I know that Jared mentioned and had talked at length about the co-viewing and guided viewing, and those resources are also available on oeta.tv at the home learning website as well. And we have a question here that says, for the 21st century learning activities, which viewing option do you feel would be best? From my perspective, it would be guided viewing, just because it has that added engagement layer to it, where you're walking your student or family through the program and highlighting those various learning opportunities.
I would agree with you, Daryl. I think this is a perfect opportunity to guide or to help give parents the tools that they need to be successful as they're helping their children navigate through this process. So I would agree with you, the guided would be best.
Shantae, this is Sonia. I'm going to jump in there just for one quick minute to make sure that we've been really clear since I've been able just to kind of listen. The the information that Susan put in the chat about osdeconnect.ok.gov, that's a platform that then for our educators across the state, they can go there. And if they weren't on the first website or the webinar, excuse me, that kind of talked about like the OETA and OSDE partnership and kind of how this is rolling out, there is a recorded series there, and there are some handouts and lots of materials that if you're just kind of getting started with this process right now, I would recommend that you start there, watch that course, and then that you can go over to the OETA website, and I think you would feel more confident then at that point and be able to go in and say, okay, now I want to click in, I want to get my account started. And Daryl has put together a great slideshow there that will walk you through, like, how do I get an account? How does the families that I'm working with, how would they do this? So if you want kind of a one-stop shop to get started, I'd suggest the osdeconnect.ok.gov, and that would get you started, and then going over to the OETA learning site, and you can start to navigate those resources there. And all of the resources, we've tried to have them on both sites for everybody, so whichever one you feel more comfortable with. But that platform is really designed to help you understand how to use the system.
What about virtual family field trips? There's another question. What about virtual family field trips? How would you navigate this concept? Let's see. For virtual family field trips, I would say, because also in PBS LearningMedia, there are a plethora of documentaries that highlight, different places and different types of environments, if you will. So that would be my best case suggestion for the virtual field trips, using those documentary segments in PBS LearningMedia for that purpose.
This is Curtis. And so regarding virtual family field trips, I'm going to add on to what Daryl said. There are also virtual family field trips in PBS LearningMedia that come with the questions for families to do either guided viewing or co-viewing, depending on the age of the child. But typically that's something when you're watching in LearningMedia, you can actually pause the resource that you're viewing and have that discussion right then. So, so it all depends on, the age of the child and how the virtual field trip is organized.
Yes. And then I also saw that Jared had a comment in there about the documentaries coming with discussing questions and etc. Yes. Also on that page, there is a section that says materials, and it has all of those discussion questions and activities that Curtis mentioned as well.
Daryl, just so that you know, Shantae was kicked off there. All of our
I didn't know that. Okay.
Best practice. So I did put it back up the screen there so that everybody can see just the first one. I just love the ideas that are coming in, around the virtual family field trips, and just reminding folks that that this is just such a wonderful tool for our families right now, and it's very easy to access. The other thing that I've been very impressed with is if you're struggling in your community, which I see that many people that I know, they're in very small rural communities across our state, to be able to access the OETA channels that have so much of this on them. OETA has a whole technical assistance piece that it's usually through kind of the old-fashioned rabbit ears sometimes in our rural communities that you might have to access these. And they have a piece on their website too that will help you if you need help just even accessing OETA in your community. So don't be afraid to reach out to OETA for help for your families in that way also.
And Sonia, to add on to what you just mentioned, if you call OETA directly, there is a helpline available for technical assistance. And that's with help with the rabbit ears and actually receiving the television program.
Right.
So a helpline has been set up for that.
Yes. And additionally, if you have any kind of hands-on, like practical questions, please don't hesitate to reach education@oeta.tv, and then I will be able to give you that support in that way as well.
I have to remember to unmute oftentimes, you guys. I don't see anything else coming in. Do you, Daryl?
No. Okay.
Well, just in the interest of time and to be respectful of that with everybody, I would like to take this opportunity from the Oklahoma State Department of Education and Curtis with OETA. We are just so grateful for all of you that are out in the field that took 45 minutes of your busy day to be with us to learn about this. You can reach out to any of us at the State Department or at OETA, and we're just more than happy. We think this is a wonderful resource for our schools and our families and our communities across our state. Someone's asking if there's a transcript.
Yes, the transcript question.
Mm-hmm. We might have to ask Levi and Jeremy.
Yes, I will actually download the transcript of the chat here right after the meeting is done, and I'll send it to you.
Okay. So we will have that, and we can make that available on the OETA site and also on the site at the OSDE. So we'll make those available to you as soon as this is done. If we don't have any more questions, Curtis, do you have anything before we sign off?
No, I just want to tell everybody thank you for joining us, and I hope it was an informative experience and that we shared some information that you can use to help you through this difficult time.
Special thanks to Jared and Dee for joining us also. They were just volunteers out there who jumped in and wanted to share with their peers. We appreciate you both.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you so much.